Good evening, everyone. Welcome to E-Schoolhouse. This is our masterclass called How to Inspire Authentic Learning. I'm Deborah Kalinikos. I'm your host and guide here at E-Schoolhouse, and I'm so happy to be here. This is a very strange time that we're living in education-wise, and I worked very hard to make sure that what I'm going to bring you in this masterclass is what you need to help get this year started to the best that you could possibly start it. So I'm Deborah Kalinikos. I am the founder of E-Schoolhouse, but I'm an engineer turned educator turned entrepreneur. I love to solve problems, which is probably why I became an engineer. When I first entered the world of education, I really had no idea how to teach. But while some of you might think that was a real disadvantage, turned out it wasn't. It was actually a huge advantage. Since I'm a problem solver, I saw each student's learning as a real challenge that I could meet for that particular child. So I approached teaching through this lens and thoroughly enjoyed watching my students just really learn. If you were to have walked into one of my classrooms at any given time, it would have looked very chaotic because there were kids moving around. It was loud. It looked like they were all doing different things, but what they were doing was learning. And it was so much fun to watch. And so now I use that background and experience to help parents achieve this very same success with their own children. Now, I want to welcome you if you're joining me here live. I so appreciate you taking the time out of your crazy busy schedule, getting everybody ready for school, and you probably working and stuff. I so appreciate your time. And I'm going to do my utmost to make sure that I bring you the value that I think you deserve. So I want to tell you, we are going live here. So really, anything can happen. I do have two very large dogs, and this is usually the time that I'm taking them for a walk. So we may hear some barking and some scratching, and I apologize for that, but they can wait. So I want to make sure that you know that there is a study guide that accommodates this masterclass. There's a link above if you didn't get it in your email. If you want to get it, it will just take a second. We'll get that sent to you right away. The other thing I want you to know that I'm using StreamYard for this live broadcast. And if you would like to communicate with me and let me know who you are, you need to grant StreamYard permission. And there's a link above for you to do just that. So let's get going. So here we go. The biggest, I started thinking about, how we're going to best help our children. And I started also thinking about what is the biggest task that your child has right now? Basically, what's his job? And I remember when my kids were younger and I was telling them, hey, your job is to go to school and learn as much as possible. So it was their job. Now, it's going to be their job for about 13 of the years that they're living with you. That's pretty important, you guys. That is really important. So it is my goal to help you as the parents, help inspire your child to get the very most out of his education, because after all, it is his job. Now, one thing that happens quite a bit in education is we take a child and try to fit him into the existing system. I cannot tell you the number of parent meetings I had when I was an educator about how their child wasn't learning, it wasn't this, and we were trying to make the child fit the system. And I learned very early on, especially as I was working with all of my students, it's not the child that needs to fit the system. It's the system that needs to fit the child. And this is called learner-centered education. And it is what will help your child really, really thrive. Okay. So the name of this session is called Those Who Can't, Won't. And I'll explain that in just a second. But right now, I'd like you to turn to the first page of your notes. It looks something like this. And what I want you to do is to write down something that you were not good at when you were a kid, something in school that you just really struggled with. I'll give you a second. Now, this was probably something that you had to do. You know, this most kids, or the biggest one that I would hear, because I would teach math and science, the biggest thing that I heard was, I'm not good at math. So whatever it is that you put down, I want you to really think about that and think about how you felt when you had to do that thing. You know, so many kids that I worked with when it was time to apply math to the science or actually work on some math, I would just lose them. They would just be deflated because they knew that they couldn't do it. How many times have you said, I'm not good at blank? What did you fill in that blank? And what about your children? Do they say things like, I'm not good at something? I'm not good at math. I can't do math. Well, if you can't do it, you probably won't. Okay? As adults, we can choose. If we're not good at something, we can choose to not do it. But as our kids are going through school, they really can't make that choice. If they really truly feel that they are not good at something and that they absolutely can't do it, they don't want to. Sometimes they have to be forced to do it. And what happens over time, if your child really feels like she can't do it, her self-esteem starts to drop. She starts saying these self-deprecating things, probably inside her head where you can't hear them. Well, I'm just not good. I'm just not very smart. Those kinds of things. And those types of sayings can really, really hurt children as they go through school. If a child thinks she can't, she won't. And this will lead to so much frustration. Okay? Now, what happens when children get frustrated? What happens in a school setting when a child gets frustrated? If it's a little child, a lot of times they'll act out and they become real problems in the classroom. If it's an older child, they'll just check out and they just won't try anymore. What I'm proposing here are some preemptive strikes against this frustration. If we can prevent this kind of frustration, there are a lot of behavior issues and self-esteem issues that we can avoid with our children. So that's kind of one of the goals here too. We want to avoid this frustration in our children. So if your child doesn't believe she can, she probably won't. Now, the next thing on the sheet, I think this is going to be kind of fun, okay? We're going to assess, where is your child? And if you have more than one child, by all means, put them on the chart also. But as we go through this, I want you to just think about one child because it'll just make it a little bit quicker process for you. So we're going to see where things are for your child and his or her own attitude about their learning. Okay, so the first thing here, it says, when my child doesn't immediately understand something, and then you're going to fill in the blank. And the way I design this is I've got that scale down there. It's going to like from 0 to 10. 0 for this particular question gets frustrated and quits. So when my child doesn't immediately understand something, she just gets frustrated and quits. Or if my child doesn't immediately understand something, she keeps trying. So you've got the two extremes. Now, more than likely, your child is going to fall somewhere in there. So put a little dot where you believe your child falls. Now, the next question, when it's time to try something new, my child, now on one end of the spectrum, we've got hesitates and immediately asks for help. Oh my gosh, you guys, I had so many kids like that. Miss. And I hadn't even finished telling them what we were going to do. Okay, some kids just check out so quickly. When it's time to try something new, my child dives right in. Okay, so you can see the spectrum of where your child might fall. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you about a minute to read through the rest of those and just put dots along those scales where you think your child might fall. And I'll give you a second to do that. If you just joined us, and I see that somebody did, we are filling out the assessment on the first page of the study guide. Okay, I hope that was enough time. I don't want to just have this be a blank screen of you guys staring at me. But anyway, here's what I'd like you to do next. And I filled one out just so you could see. You're going to draw lines connecting all of those points. So you see how that might work. So draw lines connecting all the points on those graph lines. And you can see here that my line falls mostly to one side, okay? Now yours may or may not. But what I want to point out, that if your line falls mostly on the left side of the page, that means your child has more of what's called a fixed mindset. If the line falls more on the right side of the page, then that means your child has more of a growth mindset. Now, if your child has more of a fixed mindset, they're really less likely to take on new challenges, embrace new learnings, or take risks, okay? And if your child has more of a growth mindset, it's really truly the opposite. They're more likely to take risks, they eagerly embrace new challenges, and they're really not afraid to mess up. But no child falls all the way on one side or all the way on the other. And it is very helpful for you as the parent to have an idea about where your child falls. Now, if you've spent any time with me in our weekly series, Inspirations from the House, I say pretty much every single time that parents are the experts on their children. Parents, not only are you the experts on your children, but you are the first and the most important teacher that your children will ever have. So as you go through this assessment, my assumption is that you're going to be pretty accurate about your child. You know your child better than anybody. Now, research shows that the best attitude, the best mindset for learning is a growth mindset, okay? So go to page 2 of your notes. The best mindset is a growth mindset. Now, children, we're going to talk more about this, but I want to get this quote down for you. Children are more likely to take on and persist through challenges when they understand that their intelligence is malleable and not a fixed trait. It's malleable. It can change. It can grow. Their intelligence can change. So many kids think, I'm not good at math. I'm not smart at math. And in their mind, they've just decided that they can't do it. So they're not going to do it. They are stuck there. We have to help them see that maybe they don't think they can, but they can. And there are ways that we can show a child how they can actually learn it. It's not their intelligence that's holding them back. Their intelligence is just fine. It's their mindset that's holding them back. We are all taught to believe whether or not we're smart at something. You know, when I was a kid, I was actually really good at math and science. It was kind of my jam. I loved it. But let me tell you, foreign language, I was terrible. But guess what? I never took one. I didn't have to. You know, so I avoided it. I wish I would have done it now, but I avoided it. And I don't want that for your kids. I don't want them to avoid things that could enrich their lives. We have to teach them that their intelligence can grow. okay? It all comes down to belief. Do you believe that you can do it? If you believe you can do something, you know what? You're more likely to take action to do it, right? And if you take action to do something, guess what's going to happen? You're going to grow. If you believe you can do it, you take action and you grow. We have to help our children understand this. Because if you don't believe you can do something, you're not going to take any action. And there will be no growth. And it's the growth that is that malleable part of your children's intelligence. Believe, act, grow. Very important concept, and something that we have got to make sure that our children learn. So how do we help them do that? What are some ways that we can take our children from this I'm not smart at to I think I can learn that? That's a big leap, you guys. That's a big leap, but we can do it, okay? Children can learn to develop a growth mindset if, okay, and this is in your notes, if they believe that the schoolwork that they're doing is important to their life. It relates to their life. It has a purpose in their life. They are more likely to take a risk and try it if they see where it applies to them. That makes sense, right? The other thing, children can learn to develop a growth mindset if they have a strong sense of belonging in the environment. A strong sense of belonging. I find this so interesting, especially this year, you guys, because so many of you are starting your learning journey of 2020 at home. Does your child feel like he really belongs at home? I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. Do you know how much that's going to help him just by being there, knowing that he's fully supported and unconditionally loved? That's pretty amazing. And this is also the reason why when we want children to be really involved in the environment, this is the reason why when kids get into high school, especially high school, we want them involved in the school. We want them doing something. Band, sports, theater, debate, student council. We want them involved. We want them to feel as though they are connected to their environment. That helps tremendously with their growth mindset. So the two things then for your notes, children have to see what they're learning as it has a purpose in their life. And they need to feel like they belong in the environment in which they're learning. The more we can coach our children onto the right side of this page, the more I could bring this way. Wait, this way? These cameras are backwards. Then the more I would have, this person would have a positive mindset, a growth mindset. Now, here's what's really interesting. I talk to a lot of people who are worried about their kids who might be struggling learners. Perhaps they don't really have a growth mindset. But then there are a lot of people out there who are like, oh, that's not my child, not at all, because she makes A's on everything. In fact, she really hardly gets below a 95 on anything. So she must have a growth mindset. Not necessarily true, okay? Some things come super easy to people, right? It just comes super easy. I had a student, I'm going to call her Amy. It's not her real name. She was delightful. Oh, she was just such a sweet kid, extremely smart, and could just do everything easily and would make 100. If she lost a point on something, which I was pretty generous with my grades, you guys, because I don't like grading kids. So I was really generous. But if she lost points for anything, oh, she would argue. She would argue for those points. And so one day I asked her, I said, what is your goal for all of your grades? She goes, oh, I want to have 100 on everything. And I said, well, 100 is perfect. And she's like, yeah, I want to be perfect. I want to be perfect on everything. That's not a growth mindset. She was so afraid to step outside of her comfort zone and learn something new because she couldn't be perfect. So here's what I did to help her. I said, if the number is that important to you, and I understand that it is, I promise you, if you work as hard as I know you can, I'm going to give you whatever number you want. If you want 100, I'm going to give it to you if you work as hard as you want. But here's the catch. You're going to do things different from everybody else in the class simply because you can. And I worked with her. She was in my 8th grade science class. She ended up doing high school level physics during that year. She breezed through it and she was challenged. Now that really helped her growth mindset, right? So just because your child is a high achiever, it doesn't mean they have a growth mindset. So be very careful about that. If you can help your child develop more of a growth mindset, I can attitude, I'm not afraid to take a risk attitude, I can learn that attitude, then you will help him tremendously to become a better problem solver and really increase his analytical thinking skills. And this will also help him to become a lifelong learner, which is what we want for all of our children. Okay, so studies show that when children acquire a growth mindset, their ability to take on challenges increases, and their curiosity drives them to take on even more challenges. So you know what that equates to? More learning. They think they can, they believe they can, they take the action, and they grow. Don't you think it'll be so much fun to try this with your kids this year? I mean, we're all at home, right? So try it. Well, I'll give you some ways to do that tomorrow. But I want you to try this with your kids because I think it is going to be so much fun for you to see this happen in your own household, in your own children. If a child gains confidence in his ability to learn new things, he's going to become a risk taker, a challenge seeker, and he's going to be happier too because he's going to feel such a sense of accomplishment. So I'm going to show you in the next few days, more specifically, how you do this. Okay, it's going to be so much fun for you to use these new skills of yours to see these things happen in your children. It truly is a lot of fun to do. So we'll do these strategies over the next few days, but the first thing you need to do before you can really help your children learn these strategies is you need to know where you are within your own mindset for your own learning. So here's your homework. Okay, the best way for you to help your child achieve success is to model it for him. So let's see where you are. Use that same, on the second page, I've got some homework set up for you, the same scales, the same graphical thing for you to do. Do it on yourself, and then ask your spouse. Compare notes to see where you both are. There are so many times, I have this attitude that I can pretty much do anything. I am very positive. I know my capabilities. But you guys, I'm telling you, there are times when I say things to myself like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. I just can't do that. And I know better. So as adults, how do we help our children develop that? We're going to have to model it. Okay. But the first thing you need to do is know where you are. So that brings me to the end of our very first session. I want to know if you have any comments or questions about anything that I talked about. If you do, you can type them into the chat or you can save them for later. Anybody have any kind of questions? Well, I so appreciate your time hanging out with me tonight. I really, really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night where we talk about what you should never say to your kids, and you're probably saying it to them all the time. Don't worry, you're not alone. But please join me tomorrow night, same time, same place, and we will go over what you should never say to your children. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Masterclass. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.